Welcome to our follow-on discussion on John's interview with Sally Gorton, looking at leading a prayer team in a local church. And today joining me I have Denise, Caroline, John and Liz. So we hope that you find this discussion helpful. I thought Sally had some really helpful insights in what she was talking about leading a team and the qualities she was looking for. Looking for people who are good listeners, that the Spirit will bring the answer, not us, and people who aren't judging. Caroline, you lead a team. Any other things you'd want to add to that?
I think the key is people who are not looking to give advice and unofficially counsel, and who are really keen to step back and let the Holy Spirit do the ministry. And for me, that I think is the key. Gentle people who aren't wanting to give their own opinions.
Yeah.
But we always do, don't we? We always.
And it's very hard in a
bit
small
of
church
advice.
when people often come back regularly, and
true,
you know them as friends, and there's a very tricky sort of line: is it prayer ministry or giving general advice to a friend?
Yeah.
Yes, because you might know them and their situation,
Yes,
and
you may
know
well.
what you do if you were them.
Yeah.
So we tell them.
Yes, and in a small groups, it's a homebrew style situation. It might well be slightly different.
Yes.
So there are a lot of blurred edges in a local church.
There are. There are. Yeah.
And the other thing I always find, the people I'm really keen to get on the team are busy leaders in lots of different areas of church, and so they're being pulled in lots of different directions. And if you've got small children in church, and we're blessed with a lot of families, actually it's quite hard to be on the prayer ministry team if you then have your own children either causing mayhem and nicking biscuits, as no tomorrow, or coming and sort of pulling your ankle.
So, yes, you have to recognise that here at the centre we have quite a privileged position, and it's quite a good atmosphere. Your average local church isn't quite like that. There are children running between your legs, and there's all sorts of other things going on. It is a much more realistic situation, isn't it?
And frequently prayer occurs within the local church setting as part of conversation after coffee or at a mother and toddler group, and so you are just having to grasp the opportunity when it arises.
Yes, and what that says to me is that it's something I think I was asking Sally about, that you're looking for people that have those natural gifts of prayer ministry. It's what they're like all the time, not just the persona they adopt when they're doing ministry, that they are naturally listening and naturally not judging and those things. It's not an act they put on. This is who they are. So whatever the situation the ministry takes place in, that is what they'll be like, whether it's a formal ministry setting or, as you say, a coffee or in a mother and toddler group. That's who the person will be, and you can bank on that.
And the fact that they have faith and a desire to bring that person to Jesus is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, I forgot that.
So that's all right, John. That's why I'm here.
Believe in God. That's what
But gentleness is so important, isn't it? I mean, we like to fix, but I don't know about you. I had a situation just recently where someone was wanting to fix a situation, tell me what I should do. I didn't want that. I didn't need them to tell me what to do. I knew what to do, and all it did was sent me just very frustrated, made me more frustrated than I'd been at the start. And it's knowing that God's got more for them, isn't it?
It's interesting that, because I think it raises one of the interesting things that I think we know what we would like ministry to be like to us, and that hopefully will shape how we are to others.
Yeah.
So, as you say, if someone tried to sort of fix your problem, you knew immediately, I don't want this.
Yeah.
And therefore, you'll be much less likely to fix other people's problems, because you know that I don't like that. Why would they? And for me, the big thing is, I don't like people talking too much. He says, dominating the conversation. When they just talk and talk and talk and talk, that's what annoys me. And so I am conscious not to do that when I'm praying for other people.
I think there's some other sort of more lonely people in church who don't honestly know what to do and are looking for advice, and some of them actually would quite like a few pointers, and they come forward for preministry because it's available, because they haven't got a friend to chat to. And so again, there are so many different
and I think we need to be careful with all of that, because there are some who want us to tell them what to do, and we might have very good ideas, and they may be good ideas, they may be good ideas, but then we have people who come back to us and say, oh, I did such and such and I was told to do it, or I should have done what I was told to do. And I think, no, it's your responsibility to make the choices, and we're not there as counsellors, or we're not there as advice givers. And if they want it, I think we need to say, well, let's sit down and have a coffee. This isn't part of prayer. It sounds as though you'd like some advice or some wisdom on this. You could try such and such, but this isn't, you need to make those decisions yourself, and maybe put some caveats in.
But
Go on.
there are some approaches to ministry that are about trying to speak biblical truth into people's lives.
Yes.
And that is, I mean, not so much advice, but it is, we're verge on to telling people what to do, because this is what Scripture's seen as doing. You're speaking that into someone's life.
Yes.
How does that fit?
Again, I think we need to be careful, because we can come up with have our own set phrases, our own set scriptures that we think, in a sense, are our fixes for people. We have people who come and they think, or they've been told, you need to forgive. What you've got to do is you need to forgive X, Y, and Z, and then it will all be fine. And there are some answers that are biblical, I think, are pat answers, but don't acknowledge or recognise people's pain or where they're really at, and aren't the kindness of God. You can look and think, Jesus addressed the Pharisees and said, yeah, the biblical thing would have been to have stoned the woman caught in adultery. And Jesus turned it on its head and said, who's without sin, throw the first stone. And we need to show grace and love. It's one of Sally's other points she brought up later on. What is the grace or the graceful or loving thing to do in this situation with this person? And it might not be to give them a whole load of Bible verses for them to remember and to put into practice. I'm not saying it's not good to give Bible verses, but we need wisdom with that.
But that is the beauty of encounter, isn't it? If you are able to lead somebody into Jesus' presence, and he's able to lead them with the advice and the wisdom, the truth, then we can just pray into that whilst they're having that encounter. But I appreciate that's not always the way it works out in practice. One can aspire to that and try and facilitate it. But sometimes they have their ears close to that truth.
But very often Jesus isn't telling them what to do. No. He's talking about relationship.
He's talking
and
about
favour and all of those sorts of things.
And how he loves
them. And that changes how we then respond, and what we're responding out of. We're not responding out of fear, we're responding out of love and a knowledge that he wants good things for us.
It does take, I suppose grace is the word on our part, to let them, or to let Jesus minister without us, trying to put what we think he ought to be doing into their lives. It does take a discipline sometimes to say, I know what I want to say, but I'm not going to say it.
Yeah.
And it's very hard sometimes, because we'd like to just push the process on a bit and give God a hand in this, because he really needs it.
But when we don't do that, when we don't give grace, there can be a hardness about it, and actually that person isn't treated gently, isn't treated lovingly, and it's something for us to be aware of anyway. Okay, thank you. Sally also talked about how she does supervision and how she checks out how other people are finding prayer. And I wonder what our experience has been of receiving supervision, or what follow-up we have in our own churches. Whether there's...
I was fascinated by her asking people who have received prayer. You know, how was that? You know, it's quite a brave question.
Yeah.
Me
to be
too, but I
asking
suppose in her
somebody.
role as pastoral
Yes.
carer,
Yes.
she has a responsibility for people which is possibly slightly different to another
Heading
prayer
a
ministry
ministry.
leader who hasn't.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But I still think it's a really good idea,
Great.
because actually, if you've got, particularly you might have concerns about a Prime Minister, it's very much more difficult to say, I think you're doing it wrong, than to, it's good for us to check out and see, actually I might have an issue and be concerned about somebody, but everybody else thinks they're great as a Prime Minister. Okay, fine, Lord, I'll forget what my concerns. If everybody else is comfortable, that's fine. But if we're getting responses from other people saying that they found somebody hard or dictatorial or whatever, we can then address somebody or talk about it and find out what was going on in that situation.
So you'd do that. You'd go up to somebody who'd received prayer and say, how was that? Were they any good? Marks out of 10?
I think I would do it more than I do currently. I mean, sometimes we hear here those people who've struggled with a Prime Minister or found it more difficult, and you might want to think, okay, there's a clash of personalities there, we won't put them together, but I think I'm challenged to do more of it.
No, it's fascinating.
And I suppose the other advantage is that it helps reinforce what was going on in that prayer time for that person. They're relating it, and it makes it, it sort of anchors it within them as well, perhaps.
Yes, because they are, in a sense, giving testimony, aren't they, to what has happened?
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully good.
And they're recalling it.
Yes, that's right.
I wouldn't necessarily think that it would need to be that much. I'd just check, how was it all right? How did you find the prayer teams? And then they can say what they want to. I don't think I want to know all that's gone on.
Yes.
I think you can do it either way. But what's other people's experience of either touching base or having cover at the end of a prayer or at the end of a morning?
We don't really have supervision in our church because it tends to be very flexible and over coffee or as you're chatting with people. So I think it probably would be helpful to have someone to sort of maybe offload or say, can you remember this person, or you know, pass this information on if it needs. But ours is very loose and we all do our own thing, which
And I often think that in situations, people are quite good at praying before a service together as a group.
yes,
But they're not so good at coming together afterwards to give thanks and praise and pray afterwards as well, which I think would be beneficial.
The call of Sunday lunch.
yeah,
You know,
Yeah, and
you haven't
people,
got time really.
and also because if you're in prayer ministry, you tend to be one of the last ones there. Everybody else has drifted off by that stage.
But it's also about expectation, I think, too. I mean, certainly in my previous church, we had a larger team. We always prayed at the end, those who prayed together. And if there were several pairs praying, we would pray as a group if we could. If we couldn't, then the pairs would pray for each other before they left. So it was standard practice that we did it.
Which is good.
very
And I thought it was that people knew where to go if they've got another issue.
You know, we're down normally to only one couple praying for prayer ministry as opposed to two. So I think that we pray with each other, but it was good practice when we had regularly two couples doing it.
And would you try and catch up with a couple afterwards, if possible, to see how they were doing?
No, and maybe that's something that should do more. And I thought it was really interesting moving on about Sally's team meeting every term,
Yes.
because that's something that we've slipped, because actually so comes to time and think, well, how frequently can one keep retraining people if you're on the
Sure.
same sort of team?
That's what these videos are for.
Yes.
Yes.
That's true. And
But
the sense of
I liked
refreshing.
what she was saying about, you can chat over things that you found difficult and see what other people would have done. So that would be really helpful.
But I do think it varies in terms of each of our churches is different, and I try and do something once a term, but my group aren't around a lot, so it tends to be 20 minutes or so at the end of a service, because that's what works. And I think for all of our churches we need to do what works in the setting that will bring people along. It might not be exactly what we would love it to be, but anything is better than nothing.
Yes, you're right, and to give up another whole evening for it is not the answer necessarily.
It depends how busy a church is. I mean, because it's often the same people
Exactly.
doing the same things
Yes.
all throughout the church's life. Yes.
And I'd rather have more people coming to a shorter session than a few not turning up, or a few coming along or forgetting a later session.
There's something, though, I think that, I mean, how Sally gets them together is amazing. But there's something about, if you can do that, you recapture the sense that you are part of a team. You are not the Lone Ranger superstar doing it.
Yeah.
And, I think just this, to catch this idea of being part of the body, being part of a team doing this, is always very helpful. Because I think it's so easy, well, I'm the only person doing this, I'm the best at this, or whatever it is. And to catch that sense, no, I'm one of the team, is a very helpful thing, which those meetings, I think, catch well.
And I also thought it was helpful, Sally, saying our prayer team is important, but it is a part of all that church does. It's not the only bit. And people will come with different expectations, or won't come with different expectations. John, you were asking Sally about whether people come with particular expectations, and Sally was saying sometimes people know that it will always be there, so they don't come up. I've had experience of people who come here because they don't want to talk about what's going on in their home setting, and someone that I know at church who said she knew us all too well, so could she go somewhere else? Have others had that experience, or what are people's expectations, do you think, of coming for prayer in your church?
I think that raises a very interesting question, doesn't it, about, is ministry, in a sense, is our dream that ministry happens in the local church? Or will it be the case, and is it natural for it to be the case that you may want to get prayer away from your local setting? I think part of our vulnerability that we're very bad at, I think, is to go to your local church setting and say, I need prayer. But there's something about us finds that hard. It's easier to go somewhere you can be anonymous. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
But maybe it's the same as going to a GP. There are some things we'd all go to our GP about, and we would say that was okay, but there might be other things where the GP says, actually, this isn't the best place for you, you need a referral. And there may be things which we feel are too personal or are too difficult, where we think, I know my own community, and I don't think I can bring that here at the moment. It might not be what we would love our churches to be like, but sometimes we may have to think, yes, you know what, we couldn't cope with that in our church setting.
I think people naturally feel that they might be judged, even though your premise is you really pray will not be judgmental. More likely to feel worried about that than if they're going somewhere where they're not known and they're not going to bump into them in the supermarket on Monday or whatever.
But is the ideal, though, that one could be that vulnerable in your local Christian setting?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what Christ would want, that we would be, as the body of Christ, we would be those people who are non-judgmental, who have the ability to walk alongside people and minister his love. Unfortunately, we're not there yet.
No.
Or I don't think we're there yet, which is a shame, but if we know where we're wanting to go, then we can hope and pray.
I suppose there are also those times when the prayer ministers do feel out of their depth, like one of the questions you asked, Sally. And so in situations like that, they might want to forward somebody on to people they perceive are more experienced in that particular area.
And we've certainly had that in our team in the past, where there's some deliverance things come up where the prayer ministers really were not comfortable. And let's just pause it here and pray for staying of the situation, and then bringing in the clergy or whatever the experienced team might be that needs to carry on a bit further.
I'm always torn here, though, because I think that being out of your depth is a very good thing.
Yeah.
Because you have to make that recommitment to, to the fact that you know nothing and he does, and you're utterly reliant on him. And if we minister simply in our comfort zones, I think we can start putting our own two pennyworth in there quite frequently. But it's when you haven't got a clue what to do, I think that we become a lot more reliant upon God.
True.
So there is a balance there,
Yes.
I think. And I think we should all be out of our comfort zone most of the time, really, if it keeps us closer to him. Saying, I really need you. Is a good place to be in ministry.
Definitely.
Because that's what the person need. They need him, not your comfort or comfortableness in this ministry.
And there is a truth in that we need to be out of our comfort zones in order to be trusting him. But we need to know that we're trusting him, and we also need to know that there are times when we have to go back to him and review it and reflect on it and say, we need Jesus, or we need somebody else to come and deal with this situation. And there are those situations where I think the loving thing to do is to find other people who do have more experience, or who are going to know what to do. And it might be that they say, well, do you want to come and be part of the team and be praying, which would be fantastic. But in caring for the person, we need to be careful that we don't think, we know God knows, but we also need to know we don't. And I think there is balance and wisdom in that. And the other thing is that we haven't failed if we don't know what to do. The very fact that they've brought it up, they're talking about it, means that they've moved one step on to find the next, or to know where to go. And I think that's really precious as well.
And sometimes you've got to have the confidence to close something down in that time available in church and say, let's revisit this later in the week. Can we actually make a set appointment to come and chat and then pray separately then?
Because we may not have the time, but they also may be going back to Sunday dinner and didn't anticipate that suddenly all of this was going to come up. And they may not be in a position to be really engaging or
But there's something
through.
about honouring the moment, though.
Oh, yes.
When it
Absolutely.
comes up, it's, they may not be that honest again. And it's holding that moment is a very precious thing.
And that's the wisdom and discernment why you want really mature prayer ministers who
To work that
sense
one
that.
out.
And exactly.
And I thought what Sally said about saying, we don't know what to say, but Jesus does. How is Jesus going to respond to this person bringing this up now, was so beautiful and so powerful. Because ultimately it's him at the end of the day that we want all of this to be about. Bringing people to let him bring his loving touch and his transforming power into situations. Well, thank you all. We hope that you found that helpful, and bless you in your ministries.
Thank you.